Good afternoon, everybody. Christine Barconi here in our NBC4i streaming center. We want to come with you with some breaking news right now. There are several confirmed reports that the Big Ten has canceled their football season. Now, the Big Ten is not confirming this independently, but there are several insider reports that are talking about this right now. I want to bring in Whitney Harding, who has been covering this situation since last night. Whitney, this was big breaking news last night, and now we are continuing to follow it today. What do we know right now, and who's reporting these that the Big Ten has voted to cancel football this year?
Is that the Big Ten presidents have met the last 2 days. So they had a scheduled conference call, Zoom meeting, some kind of a meeting on Saturday. And then on Sunday, they had a follow-up meeting. And I confirmed with Ohio State last night that President-elect Christina Johnson was not on the call Saturday. She was on the call last night. Now, no vote or official vote, I guess you can say, was taken on Saturday at all, just kind of gauging where the presidents were sitting. We are now learning today, Dan Patrick said on his radio show this morning that on the Sunday call last night, it sounds like the majority of the presidents in some kind of a vote, again, not sure if it's like an official vote
Right.
or just another gauge interest vote, wanted to cancel the season. It sounds like only two schools held out, and that was Iowa and Nebraska. Everybody else voted to cancel the season. And now, just in the last hour or so, the Detroit Free Press is reporting the Big Ten will cancel the season. Official announcement coming tomorrow. And then the other thing the Big Ten presidents were wanting to do was gauge the interest of the other conferences across the country. That caused an emergency meeting of the Power Five commissioners yesterday. And the Big Ten just wanted to see what other conferences are maybe going to jump in and join in on this idea of canceling the season. And when they say cancel, I really think they're looking at postponing it. And that's a whole other set of issues.
Right. So you're talking about postponing. People had been floating around the idea to maybe postpone it until spring and have a spring football season, hold off on the NFL draft and the eligibility deadlines and different things like that. Can you kind of talk about that and what that might look like?
So that brings up a whole nother set of issues because you brought up eligibility and things like that. I mean, there are players who, looking ahead, would maybe want to start moving towards a combine situation at that point. For me, the biggest question is, how are you going to have these football players play a full season in the spring and then turn around and assuming that seasons will start up again as normal in September?
Right. It's really difficult.
It's not a lot of recovery time. I mean, you think about how long these guys need to have their bodies recover. So many surgeries happen in the off season, things we don't even hear about because they're arthroscopic. They're real simple, small procedures, but you still have to recover from that.
Certainly.
So I think that's the biggest deal when it comes to moving things to the spring. Not to mention, of course, it affects spring sports as well because some of those sports like to have the attention, the fans, and that sort of thing. And we all know when college football is on, that's what's going on, especially around here in Columbus.
Yeah, especially in Columbus.
So.
So we're on Facebook Live right now. We have thousands of people watching us right now, and they're commenting. It's kind of a mixture of emotions, and I know we're feeling that. I mean, we live and breathe for sports as well. You're a sports anchor. I am an OSU grad. I mean, this is a huge deal. I'm sure the decision is not been made lightly. So you got to keep in the health of so many people in mind, not only with the pandemic, but then you also talk about the injuries and the recovery time heading into the NFL. A really big high profile Ohioan, Joe Burrow, tweeted today that he, really feels for these players that had this been the situation 1 year ago, maybe he wouldn't have been the first round draft pick, that underdog that we watched all season kind of rise to the top. So I know you spoke to some OSU parents, right, today?
I'm going to speak to some parents.
Okay.
I spoke to some through text.
Got it.
They put out a letter. I mean, I guess it would be considered a letter. It's all virtual these days, but they put one out.
An open letter.
Saying they want their sons to play. I'm going to talk to them about that idea and those sorts of things. Because a lot of what's going on here, Christine, is you have to remember these are the presidents that are meeting. These are of the universities. These are not athletic directors. These are not coaches. These are presidents of the universities. And that is kind of a different group
Certainly.
than those that oversee athletic departments. They've got a whole other like set of things that they are looking at with regards to this. And I think it's going to be interesting moving forward to see how the people in the athletic departments who have been kind of working on getting these practices lined up, doing the phase-in approach, how they're going to respond to this, because it is two different kind of, I guess you call them governing, even though they're not really governing, but two different bodies, if you will. So I think that that's something we all have to keep in mind is when it comes to college sports, there's so many different levels of people who are overseeing different things. And that's what makes it so complicated. Then you bring in the fact these are amateur athletes. They're not being paid. And that makes it so much harder because there's risk and all these different things going on.
A lot at play.
Yes. And so we saw last night around midnight, actually. I remember I got home from work. I got on Twitter.
I saw your tweet. I don't know if you got any sleep at all, Whitney.
What else could go on tonight? It did. And so some of the player from each of the Power 5 conferences, they came together and put out that statement with the suggestion of unionizing, organizing, whatever you want to call it. And the Big Ten rep was Justin Fields. The ACC rep was Trevor Lawrence. And I think it's so interesting. These are guys who they're going to get drafted.
For sure.
They'll go top 10. They don't even have to play this year and they'll go top 10. But they are using their voices to speak out because they know that there are so many guys, like you mentioned, on their teams who this year could have been so much for them. And so I think it's so impressive to see, whether you agree with what they're saying or not, I think it's really impressive to see these two-star athletes really coming out and sticking up for the rest of their teammates and fellow players who would really benefit so much from this season.
Certainly. But the presidents are the ones who are voting on this, but you got to think the Big Ten presidents, especially schools like Ohio State. I know Nebraska was a dissonant vote, but Michigan State, they understand that a large part of their draw from students from all over their state and then from the Midwest in general comes because they want that big football atmosphere. So if you can't have that big football atmosphere in the fall, what do? Do you push it to spring? So much at play here. I mean, not only budgets as far as the athletic departments, but also drawing that pool of students that you maybe otherwise wouldn't because they really want that big football school. So
and we're talking so much about football, but you got to remember there's a bunch of other sports.
Exactly.
Because if there is no fall football season, there's no fall sports. So soccer players and runners and field hockey, these types of sports,
volleyball,
and I know that they don't have like the professional money to make eventually like football does.
It's still what they dedicated their lives to.
Yes. And this is for many of them the pinnacle of their sport. And all of a sudden, think of those seniors.
Yeah.
And like, you just don't know, like, oh my gosh, this was going to be my last year. And the emotional like push pull. I talked to some high school coaches this morning about what they've been through. And they said just the emotional push pull for our kids has been so like draining.
Exactly.
I know I feel drained all the time.
I bet you do. I mean, right now, the past few weeks with the Big Ten schedule coming out and all the games being rearranged, it kind of feels like mid-March all over again when it was one thing after the other. No, the March Madness tournament, first it was no fans, and then it was they're not leaving the state, and then it was like done. So it kind of just feels like deja vu, just like we were feeling in mid-March. Like what else could come out, So. It's we're all hoping this would end in a deep breath. We're all hoping this would end in the spring, but it is carried over now into summer and into fall. So we'll have to see what happens. Whitney, thank you so much for talking to me today. I really appreciate it. I know you got a lot of work to do, and we'll look forward to your story later on the broadcast side of things and on NBC4i.com with those student athlete parents. Whitney, thank you. See you later.
Sure.
All right, everybody. So it is 1 o'clock right now. So about 3 more hours until first at 4. And we will see you guys then for the show. And then we'll also have more updates on NBC4i.com throughout the day. So stay with us there. Bye.